Hello and welcome back to Rock Cycle. Now festival season 2019 may just about be over, so that means it's time to already start focusing on next year's festivals and more importantly, who's going to be there. Now first of all, I just want to say a bit of a quick thank you and a celebration because the channel's been doing pretty well recently, although that partly may be thanks to Post Malone and 21 Pilots rather than myself, but I'm still going to celebrate. We've smashed past the goal of 100 subscribers, which means now the next target is 1,000 subscribers, which is quite scary, so I'm just going to not think about that for the time being. But anyway, let's now get into this list. There's about a dozen or so names on here, and it's all from my personal opinion, from forums like eFestivals, from Reddit and Facebook groups. So I just want to make clear there's no concrete evidence for any of these. It's all rumours and speculations, but there's a bit of reasoning behind most of them, which I think makes most of these acts likely to be there. But with that being said, I'm going to give each of these acts a personal rating out of 10 on how likely I think they will be there. So first up at number 1 we have Kassabian. Now Kassabian put out some strange tweets and Instagram posts around the time of Reading and Leeds Fest this year, saying it's been too long since they played there or something like that, with photos of them at the festival, which personally made me and a lot of other people think that meant they were going to be the secret set. But it never happened, so I guess maybe it was hints for them to be there this year. And even if those posts mean nothing, they are working on a new album despite having a year out, and they're an established headliner, so if that album's out next year, it would work out well for them to make a return to the festival with the new album and put on another headline show. So I'm going to give them an 8 out of 10 for likeliness. Up next we have the Arctic Monkeys. Do I need to say anything else about them? One of the biggest, if not the biggest, British rock acts at the moment. But despite that, we haven't seen them at the festival for quite a while now. Not even since the release of their last album. They haven't been doing much in the way of UK festivals. So it's about time they came back and put on a show. With that being said, there's no really specific reason why they would be here this year as compared to the last couple of years. So I'm going to give them a rating of 5 out of 10. Another one for the bucket hat fans, and that is Liam Gallagher. He's also working on a new album, which is something that's going to be said quite a bit in this list, because that's quite the general pattern. You put an album, you do a few festivals to promote the album. But yeah, he's got a new album. Even if you're not a fan of him exactly, he's worth having as a headliner just for the Oasis songs he plays. Liam Gallagher has massive star power across multiple generations, unlike very many other acts really. So I reckon there's a solid chance we'll probably be seeing him, so I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10 on likeliness to be there. Now for quite a drastic change in style of acts, Slipknot. Now 10 years ago or so, these would be almost definitely going to be the next Leeds and Reading headliner, with their new album out reaching number 1 in the UK, which is quite an achievement for a metal band these days. But it seems Reading and Leeds is really moving past their metal and rock heavy direction and moving into a new direction. But that being said, maybe they'd want to put these on as one of the headlines for one day to keep the old fans happy, keep them coming. So that being said, I feel like they are probably about a 3 out of 10. They don't seem that likely with the new festival's direction that they are going in, and the fact that we haven't had a metal headliner since Metallica, which was 4 or 5 years ago now. I feel if you did have Slipknot on, you'd also need someone like our next artist on that would keep the new generations of fans they're trying to appeal to happy. And that next artist is Skepta. One of the biggest names in British grime. He was meant to play there a couple of years back, meant to headline the Radio 1 stage, but that had to be cancelled because he had a scheduling conflict. Now since then he has had a new album out, so that does kind of mean he deserves to be higher up in the billings, and is not much higher up than headlining the second stage rather than being one of the top 2 or 3 acts on the main stage really. But I do feel while his album was popular in the scene he was already in, it didn't really get much of a broader audience, it didn't get much mainstream attraction compared to his older music, so he hasn't really brought in many new fans with his new album, so I feel that makes him a bit unlikely to be a headliner just of yet. Maybe we'll have to wait till the next album, see if he can break a bit more into the mainstream to attract a wider audience. So I reckon that makes him a 4 out of 10 on likeliness. Now we have one of my personal favourite acts, Bring Me The Horizon. A couple years back did the secret set, often means you're going to come back and headline the next year, but for them it never happened. And some people seem to think that's because they were doing their own thing at all points that year and didn't really want to be headlining multiple British festivals, because yes, they are a big band, but are they big enough to sell out 2 different festivals? Probably not, I'm afraid. But with new music from them coming sooner rather than later, there may be a good chance we'll be getting the next album from them next year. And I think Bring Me the Horizon, with All Points East, has solidified their spot as a festival headline act. Last time they played Reading and Leeds was 2015, I believe, and they were one below the headliner. And at that point, they didn't even have All of That's the Spirit out, and they didn't have Ammo out, which have done massive things for the band and opened them up into a much bigger audience. So I think at some point we are going to see them as a Reading and Leeds headliner. I reckon there's a fair chance it might be there next year, so I'm giving them a 6 out of 10. But I feel would have been more likely to be this year's headliner rather than next year's, so we'll just have to see how it works out. Now we have probably the biggest name, arguably, in alternative female music, Billie Eilish. She was there this year. She supposedly had the biggest crowd they've ever had at the festival, although that does seem to be a bit up to debate and there doesn't seem to be any reliable sources saying that. But nonetheless, she had a massive crowd and put on a pretty good show. So a lot of people think she's going to do a similar thing to Post Malone, go from that 4 o'clock slot one year to next year headlining. Now, I certainly think the crowd and show she put on were headliner level, but I feel she doesn't have enough music to pad out an hour and a half long set. How many casual fans are you going to get to sit through an hour and a half just to hear Bad Guy? I feel you'll get a lot more casual fans for her shorter set than you would for a main set. So I think while she is definitely going to come back and headline the festival one day, if her career continues on this trajectory, I think 1 year is a bit too soon for it, so I think this is rather unlikely. I'm going to be giving her a 3 out of 10 on the chances to headline. Up next, we have someone who's very different from the traditional Reading and Leeds headliners, and that is Drake. As Reading and Leeds continue to push in a more hip-hop and pop-focused direction with the festival, who would be more perfect to headline than Drake, to really help solidify them as being a more rap and R&B style festival than they are in the past. One of the biggest names in music, and he even came out a couple of years ago just to perform one song for a couple of minutes, so he clearly is fond of the festival, is well aware of it and likes it if he's happy to do something like that. So I reckon there's a good chance we're going to see him back there. But that was a few years ago now, so I feel a bit like, why wasn't he there the year after, or why wasn't he there this year? Like, I feel if they wanted him to headline, they probably would have done it by now. But I guess Drake will cost a lot of money. It's going to be hard to organise an artist of that level. So I'm sure they will be trying for it, and maybe this hasn't worked out in the past. With that being said, I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10. He's probably going to be at the festival at some point. It's just, can they get it booked this year? Now we have the UK indie titans, Foals. Fresh off the success of their last album, and we're already releasing a new one in the space of a couple of months, so it's a very quick turnaround for them. Now they have co-headlined the festival in the past, but with the success of the last album and the probable success of the next album, I think that really sort of solidifies them as solo headliners now. And I think there's a very good chance we're going to see them back at the festival after these 2 albums. It'll be a great way for them to complete this busy year or 2 they've had for the band. So I reckon a solid chance of seeing them at 7 out of 10. Now another one of my personal favourites, Biffy Clyro. This is another band that's just put an album and is already working on the next one. So they were there a few years ago, also co-headlining, although they've solo headlined in the past, I believe. But with these 2 new albums out, with a great new promotion they've got from them, they've definitely earned their own solo headliner spot. Put on a great live show, attract a massive crowd, and they really are one of the most iconically Reading and Leeds bands you can have. If you had to think of a band that plays that festival, they're one of the top ones. So I'm sure the festival would love to have them back again. Now this next one I personally think is a bit rather unlikely, but every year she gets rumoured to appear and she never does, but that is Florence and the Machine. Now she's definitely alternative music, which the festival is liking to look into and sort of more of the direction they're heading. But I do feel she may be a bit too much pop for them to say, like, they're going to new directions, but the festival seems keen to stay away from particularly poppy music, which Florence and the Machine isn't exactly pop music artist, but she's a lot closer than some of the ones they've already had. And I feel if they wanted her, they've had many opportunities for about the past 10 years or so. They could have hired her to headline, and they just haven't done it. So I feel they probably don't really want to, so I feel there's not much more chance of her really this year. So 2 out of 10 for her, I'll say. Now another big indie band, and that's Catfish and the Bottommen. Fresh off the success of their 3rd album, if you can call it success exactly. The fans all loved it, but it was a bit critically slated, and a lot of other people just complained about the album, saying it's very similar, which is true, to be fair, but they seem to be ever popular. They do sell out arena tours in the UK. They've got another tour coming up soon in the UK. So they definitely have the fan base that puts them on the headline level. Although I personally feel they're not quite there yet. I feel they're somewhere in between the headliner and the sub-headliner. So I reckon the chance having them headline next year is about a 6 out of 10. Now one more indie band for you, and that is Two Door Cinema Club. Now despite having a new album out this year, Two Door Cinema Club for me is a band that I never really think is quite at the headline level. Their first album was probably the best one, and they've never really been quite able to match the success of that. I feel they're one of those bands that's just got stuck just below the headliner. They're always close, but they'll never quite get to that level, despite being a pretty good band, I think. So I'm going to say the chance of them headlining is 4 out of 10, despite the new album and the tours they're doing for that. Now we have what will probably be a fan favourite, and that is the iconic band, The Killers. This band has released so many great songs over the years, and they have performed at Reading and Leeds in the past, but not for quite a while now. And I think it's about time they'd want them to have them back at the festival, get them back there, to get people to see them, because they would get a big crowd. And Reading and Leeds has the tradition that they like to get one of the acts to headline Glastonbury last year and put them as one of the headliners of Reading and Leeds this year. And the Killers did do that, so there's a good chance maybe they'll pitch them, maybe they'll get them over at Reading and Leeds. But personally, I think the next artist is more likely to do that than them. So we're going to give the Killers a 5 out of 10. And the next artist is Stormzy. Now as the festival is moving into their new direction, there is no bigger British grime artist than Stormzy. He's one of the hottest artists right now in the world. He very controversially headlined Glastonbury Festival this year, but I think he put on a good show and he got a big crowd, and he shows he is at that level of artist now. So I think putting him on will bring great attention to the festival. It'll get a lot of the new fans that they're aiming for to come to the festival, so I reckon the chance of seeing him there is 7.5. I'm going to give him out of 10. I'm just going to throw that half in there. Next up we have Haim. Now this band was also headlined the Radio 1 stage a couple of years back, but since then they've got their third album on the way. Now they've done great things in a fairly short period of time, and they're moving up and up and up. Again, this may be a bit too poppy for Reading and Leeds to want to have, but Haim are a great band, and I'm sure they're moving on to bigger and better things constantly, so it's a good act to get while you can, because they're just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. But that being said, although I feel like the festival wants them, I don't know if they'd invest in them as a headliner. So I'm going to give them a chance of being there at 5 out of 10. Now we have the pop punk icons Blink-182. There's another band with new music out, they're doing tours, etc, etc. I feel I've said that a lot this list. Honestly, despite being once one of the biggest bands out there, I feel they've just declined quite a bit since then. There's not much hype about them anymore. People just aren't as excited about Blink-182 as they used to be, unfortunately. And their new music's just not quite as relevant as they used to be. Now that being said, I'm sure they would still also get a big crowd. But apparently I've heard a lot of people say that live they're not quite at the level that they used to be, which is a bit of a shame. So that being said, I feel they're just not as likely to headline Reading and Leeds anymore compared to as they used to. So I'm only going to give them a 3 out of 10 rating. And last but by no means least, we have Green Day. Now these are another older band which I do feel has unfortunately fallen off a bit, although I don't think Green Day have fallen off to the same extent that Blink-182 have. And they still put on a great live show, so they're definitely worth catching if you get a chance to see them. They're also working on new music, and they're a band that's been at Reading and Leeds quite a few times, so well, why not have them back next year? I reckon there's a good chance they will be there. I reckon there's a good chance we will see them in the UK somehow next year, whether it be a festival or on tour. So we're going to give them a chance of being there at 5 out of 10. So well, that concludes the list, although this is all speculation. Personally, I do feel the most likely trio we will get will be Foles, Kassabian and Stormzy, although I reckon that's not for definite. And I reckon it's a good chance that the headliners will be from this list. Maybe a couple of oddballs thrown in there, because who knows what's going on with this festival anymore. It's becoming harder and harder to predict. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know down in the comments who you think it's gonna be, whether you agree or disagree with me. And if you want to like, share, subscribe, etc. as we push towards our new goal of 1,000 subscribers, that'd be great, because we've got quite a long way to go. So I'll see you in the next video.